Let me know when you're live.
We are live.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. Before we get started, just want to run through a couple logistics. First, my name is Maria Belén Power, and I'm the Undersecretary of Environmental Justice and Equity at the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. And want to first invite any elected officials, Representative Hong, if you want to introduce yourself or say a few words to the council members and to the public, both virtual and in person. I'll welcome for you to do that.
Thank you, Undersecretary. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiano Hong. I am the newly elected state representative here in the city of Globe, representing the 18 Middlesex district, which is the Highland and the Acre neighborhood. I'm honored to be here this evening to meet the Undersecretary and everyone on the council. I'm looking forward to learn and be one of your partners going forward. This is Michelle, this is my aide, and we work closely to help support anything that you like from our office. And we want to be one of your partner going forward here. I'm new, been only a week and 2 days, a week and 2 days in this role, and so far it's fantastic. And I'm looking forward to serve our community together. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. This is our 18th meeting of the Environmental Justice Council. We're trying to get to different parts of the state. But before we get started, I want to hand it over to our contractor and our friends at ERG to run through a few logistics and interpretation.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Sophia with ERG, a contractor supporting this effort. I'll first start with providing meeting logistics for our Zoom attendees. This presentation is available with virtual interpreters in Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole, Khmer, and American Sign Language, ASL. In-person interpretation is available in Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, and Khmer. Zoom attendees should use the interpretation channel indicated by the globe icon in their Zoom control panel to select your preferred language. English speakers should select English so they can hear any translated comments. Closed captioning will be auto-generated. If you are a virtual attendee and would like to use telephone audio for this meeting, please click on the small arrow next to the microphone, select Switch to Phone Audio, and follow the directions provided. Virtual attendees can send an email to meetings@erg.com with any technical questions related to the meeting logistics. If you would like a translated version of the presentation slides, please go to the Environmental Justice Council website at the link in the chat. You will find translated set of presentation slides there. This meeting is being recorded and will later be available for viewing through a link that will be posted on the Environmental Justice Council website at the same link provided. Virtual attendees can submit questions in the Q&A box. If you would like to make a comment during the time for public comment, please raise your hand and we can unmute you. If you are commenting in another language, please speak into your language channel and your interpreter will translate the comment into English. You may type a comment into the Q&A box and I can read it aloud as well. In-person attendees who are asking questions, please make sure you speak loudly so that the virtual attendees can hear you. Please speak slowly for speakers and anyone asking a question so that we can accommodate the interpreters. Please use simple language and minimize the use of acronyms. I would like to remind council members to only use the chat function on Zoom for meeting logistics and for no other communication in accordance with open meeting law. We are also asking all council members to leave their cameras on for the whole meeting. Now I'll turn it over to Maria Belén Power to go over the agenda and roll call.
Thank you. Thanks, Sophia, and always to ERG for helping us with their logistics. We're trying to have these meetings be as inclusive as possible with language access, some snacks, and really trying to make sure that the folks have an easier time participating. I want to acknowledge we have Representative Elliott who joined us. If you want to, say a few words or introduce yourself, we'd love to hear from you.
Good evening, everyone. I know my colleague, my new colleague in government, said a few words, but welcome to Lowell. My name is Rodney Elliott. I'm a state representative for the 16th Middlesex, and I represent parts of North Chelmsford and on the other side of the river that also has lots of UMass in the Senate. But again, welcome to Lowell. And thank you for coming and hosting, this important meeting with the council. Just by way of background, real quickly, I spent 25 years at the Environmental Protection Agency, starting in Washington and serving in various roles. During that time, I was also the Brownfield Director for Mass DEP for a time, and before I was elected to the Lowell City Council. I did spend 24 years as a member of the Lowell City Council as well, but before becoming elected as a state representative, I finished out my career, my 42 years in government with the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Even at EPA, I did for a very short time, I managed the EJC grant program. So I understand, the importance of that seed money or any funding, quite frankly, to environmental justice communities, including City of Lowell and, so many throughout our Commonwealth and quite frankly, throughout the nation. So I just wanted to highlight maybe a couple of things, or at least, the latest, coincidentally today, Senator Markey announced, that he has fought as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, $3 billion. That's $3 billion for the first of its kind environmental justice block grant program. So, that's real money. That's money that communities like Lowell and Lawrence and all our gateway cities across the Commonwealth can benefit. I mean, maybe the council knows this stuff, but what I will say is in our last term, I was proud to vote, and I'm going to read it so I make sure that I get it correct. And it was after our session ended, but Massachusetts, we passed, critical energy reforms to meet the 2050 net zero climate goals. And I see everybody's, nodding. So I'm telling you what you mostly know. But what I did think was an important element, and I did read the bill, and I do read the bill, but it establishes the Office of Environmental Justice and Equity and authorizes to develop guidance for community benefit plans and agreements to develop, cultivate, impact analysis and framework to do the work for EFSB. So, that was just one of many elements of this bill, but I do think it's important. So, I mean, I could probably go on and on, but I won't. I'm here to, to listen and learn, and we thank you for, is this your 27th?
18.
27, 18.
But eventually we'll get there.
Eventually, so I hope you come back, and thank you for all you do, communities like Lowell, and, we appreciate it, and, knowing that, older cities, without question, have, more exposure, and communities have more exposure to elements that affect quality of life. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And if I can answer any questions, or if you have any you need to reach me, I'm all over the web, and phone numbers and emails and issues I get hold of me. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we'll call the meeting to order, and if Sophia can help me with roll call.
Absolutely. All right. Leila Barnett,
Yes, present.
Madeline Fraser Cook, Melissa Harding Ferretti,
Present.
Cheryl Hawley,
Present.
Caroline Hahn,
I'm here.
Namrita Kapoor, Lydia Lowe.
Here.
Marcos Luna.
Here.
Peter Matthey, Sophia Owen,
Present.
Jen Salonetti, Patricia Spence, Ari Zorn, and Miles Gresham. And Maria Belen Power.
Present. So do we have quorum?
We do.
Great. And now we will move to the approval of the minutes from our November meeting. And could you help me with roll call?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I need to break in. Our Mandarin interpreter, Wendy, I don't think that your room can hear you. Could you please, try speaking? Oh, good. They're working now. Great. Apologies for the interruption.
No worries, thank you.
Cecil. All right, so we'll go into another roll call now.
Yes, please.
All right. Kalila Barnett,
There is an error on the minutes.
oh, okay.
So, so I think we'll do that under discussion, right? Before we move to approve. So, okay, so let's do the roll call, and Kalila, then we can do the amendment to the minutes.
Okay, so what should I be saying in the roll call?
For discussion.
You don't wanna vote yet, so.
So let's, okay, so motion to approve the minutes. Can we have a motion?
I move to approve.
Can we have a second? And then is there any discussion on the minutes?
Yeah, the minutes say that I was present at that meeting and I was not there.
And the minutes say that I was remote and I was there, so, yeah, and I did submit that to Hannah, so.
Okay. So any other discussion or amendments to the minutes from November? Great. So can I get a motion to approve?
Oh, you just got that.
Okay, can I have roll call, please?
Yeah. All right, Kalila Barnett,
I'm gonna abstain because I was not there.
all right, Madeline Fraser Cook, Melissa Harding Ferretti,
Yes.
Cheryl Hawley,
I approve.
Caroline Hahn,
Subject to the amendments, I approve.
Namrita Kaur, Lydia Lowe, Marcos Luna,
I approve.
Peter Matthey, Sophia Owen,
Approve.
Jen Salonetti, Patricia Spence, Ari Zorn, and Miles Gresham, and Maria Belen Powers.
Approved. Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And so now we are going to open it up for questions or comments from the public. And again, I'll pass that to either Sophia or Kessel for logistics on participation from the public.
Yes. So for virtual attendees, you can type your questions into the Q&A box, and I can read them out loud, or you can use the raise hand feature to ask questions verbally. Please feel free to submit your comments online as well. Questions may be submitted to the link that will be dropped in the chat. And if you're having any technical issues, you can email meetings@erg.com. For people in the room, if you have comments, you can just raise your hand and we'll call on you and let you speak, make a comment in the room.
Anyone online?
We have a couple of comments in the chat that I can read here. This one says, hello, I am with the recently created New England EJ Federal Funding Hub, funded by BAR and powered by the Grassroots Fund. We want to help amplify the EA Grantmakers Program, which is $50 million for New England environmental projects managed by HRIA, ACE, and Grassroots Fund. I don't want to assume everyone knows about it, so I just wanted to uplift this. Thanks. A link to RFP here, and important to note that there are plenty of technical assistance. Someone from the Grantmakers project team can join a future meeting if there is interest. If this has already been discussed or raised, disregard, thanks. And then a link was provided in the chat. And that seems to be the only virtual question or comment. Do we have any people in the room who would like to make a comment?
So we'll move on to our next topic, which is a presentation and discussion from my colleague Deanna Moran, who is Chief Coastal Resilience Officer, a new position created by the governor and Secretary Tepper. And so just a little bit of background: coastal flooding, storms, and erosion affect over 3 million people and disproportionately affect environmental justice communities, with over half of the coastal population being an environmental justice block. And so Resilient Coast Initiative aims to develop a comprehensive framework for coastal resilience, addressing these threats proactively. And so Chief Deanna Moran will present on the plan's progress, the challenges, and any engagement opportunity that we have through the initiative. So yeah, that's it for you.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and talk with you today. I'm really excited to be here and tell you a little bit about what we've been doing with Resilient Coast. Oh, talk louder. Yeah. Okay. I'm usually pretty loud, so I'm surprised by that. Okay. So let me go forward. So I'm going to cover, I don't know how familiar people are with the Resilient Coast Initiative, so I'm just going to give a little bit of background on it. So apologies for anybody who's kind of been following this and has heard this spiel before. But as Undersecretary Power said, the goal of the Resilient Coast Plan is to be a first phase of an overarching Resilient Coast initiative. And the purpose of the initiative is for us to develop a comprehensive, equitable, statewide framework for coastal resilience. We know we have a lot of coastal communities that have been doing this work on the ground already for many years, and in many cases in partnership with the state and with funding from the state. But there has been not as much kind of state leadership in this space. And so that is what we're trying to kind of fill a gap. We don't want to duplicate any effort. And so we're looking for ways to accelerate, facilitate, and help amplify the work that our coastal communities are doing. And this was in part spurred by our state climate adaptation hazard mitigation plan called Resilient Mass that came out in 2023. And one of the findings was that our coastal hazards, erosion, flooding, are one of our primary issues in Massachusetts, aside from heat. Those are really kind of our two near-term priorities for resilience. And so that is kind of the goal of this initiative. We launched in November of 2023. We are about 15 months into this planning process, and we are hoping that a plan is forthcoming later this winter or early spring. That is not going to be the end of the work that we all have to do together. And the plan really just kind of lays the groundwork for all of the implementation work that we really want to jump into after that. And I will just note, in terms of the, I think I have a timeline here. So before I get to the timeline, so this is just a snapshot of our overall goals for Resilient Coast. And you can see here we have 6 main goals. These were engagement and feedback on these goals was really front loaded at the beginning of the process when we launched the initiative back in November of 2023. And these are really what we landed on. Our goal is to have the plan and everything that we do under the initiative really rooted in these 6 goal areas. And as you can see, advancing equity and environmental justice is one of those 6 goals. So this is just a snapshot of our project timeline. So you can see kind of where we are in the process. We have had multiple waves of engagement already. So as I said, we front loaded a lot of our public engagement when we launched last fall and last winter. We front loaded a lot of feedback on our vision, our goals, our indicators to really help set the foundation for the rest of the plan. And then we had our second wave of engagement this past summer and early fall. We had a series of virtual public meetings, some online public surveys that were conducted. And we also have a couple of standing stakeholder groups, including an internal work group made up of state representatives and an external task force that is a cross-section of representatives from the environmental community, environmental justice, academia, philanthropy, insurance, real estate, and other sectors. And those 2 groups have really been helping to guide the development of the plan as well. Just to orient folks a little bit to what we're talking about when we talk about resilient coasts, the scope that we are planning for is this area. And so you'll see kind of 2 things here. You'll see some communities outlined in black and some communities that are orange. What this is really showing is our current coastal zone versus the additional communities that are being brought into the geographic scope of the plan. So we want this to be a long-range plan. We don't want to work on this and have it be obsolete in 5 years because 2030 is just around the corner. And so we are planning on a 50-year time horizon. So we're looking out to sea level rise projections for the 2070s. And when we do that, we find that these 20 additional communities that are outlined in orange are expected to have some coastal impacts. They are mainly communities up tidal rivers. And so we're seeing an increased tidal influence in those communities because of sea level rise. And that's kind of why they're being added here, but they're not maybe typically thought of as being part of the coastal zone or being coastal communities. So really just want to emphasize that. So the area that we're planning for is 98 communities along our coast, and you can see them all here. And like I said, the blue line the blue area you can kind of see on that map is the projected 2070 floodplain. Okay. And so I know it's kind of hard to see when it's zoomed out like this for the coast, but what we're showing here is those same 98 communities that you just saw, they are in gray. You're seeing the kind of the same blue, which is the blue from the last map, and that is the 2070 floodplain. And what you're seeing in pink and red are environmental justice communities. So the pink is showing you the full environmental justice block group as it is designated at the state level. And the red is showing you where that block group intersects with the 2070 floodplain. So that red area is really the area where we are seeing environmental justice intersecting with floodplain exposure. And as you can see, a lot of that is in that kind of Boston metro area, but we also have it down in Buzzards Bay and on the Cape as well. Okay. So our overall approach to this plan, I'm just gonna kind of walk through our snapshot of how we're approaching this. So one of the big things that we are doing through Resilient Coast is attempting to delineate and identify coastal resilience districts. And the way that we approached this is really by looking at the things that are unique geographically about different areas of our coast that would influence what the most effective coastal resilience strategies might be. So for instance, we looked at what are the predominant kind of underlying coastal environments in different areas of our coast. We have a really unique and varied coastline. We have areas that have a lot of barrier beach and back marsh. We have salt marsh. We have rocky banks. We have coastal floodplain. It's all kind of, depending on where you are on the coast, it can vary. So we looked at that. We also looked at watershed boundaries. So how water moves. That's really important. And we know a lot of people are already collaborating at that watershed scale. So we looked at those watershed boundaries and also the sub-basin boundaries that are located within those watersheds. And then we looked at coastal hazards. So again, depending on where you are in the coast, you might be looking at sea level rise, storm surge, coastal erosion as kind of your primary hazards. And some places have more of one or more of those, and some have less. So we looked at coastal hazards as well. And then we also, those things tend to, in some places, align with other kind of demographic and development patterns. So, is it a densely populated area? Is it a lower density area? Kind of, is it, mostly single family or multifamily? That is kind of incorporated into that delineation as well. And what we came up with was 15 coastal resilience districts coastwide. And this is kind of a very artistic view of them. I have another map that shows them a little bit more in a little bit more detail. But that is really the scale at which we are hoping to encourage and facilitate communities to be working cross-municipally on coastal resilience. So that is one kind of goal of this initiative, is we really want people to be working together at a larger scale on coastal resilience. Then within that, because we know that even within those coastal resilience districts, it's not a monolith, there's going to be a lot of variation within those areas. We're looking at two different things. One is all the various kind of coastal typologies that might exist, even if the predominant one is salt marsh or barrier beach or what have you. There's going to be likely a mix, and they might require different strategies. And then also we're looking at near-term risk. And here, even though, like I said before, we're planning out for the 2070s, we know that there are a lot of areas that are at much more immediate risk, that have risk now or are going to have risk in the 2030s. So we're looking at the 2030 floodplain, and we're specifically looking at where it intersects with a lot of people, housing, infrastructure, and economic resources. So where are those things really near term going to be at risk? And so we're going to be mapping those places and identifying those places. And importantly, identifying how that vulnerability varies depending on where you are on the coast. And then this is all going to feed into two levels of strategies. One is kind of place-based guidance. So depending on which coastal environment you're working in, what are the best practices? What is most likely to be effective as a coastal resilience strategy? You might do something different in a salt marsh than you would do in a coastal floodplain or on a barrier beach. And then our coastwide strategies. The coastwide strategies are really the meat of the plan. That is, what can the state do? What are the policies, regulations, financing, other levers that the state can step in and provide to help accelerate this work and make sure we meet our climate resilient goals. Okay, and so these are those 15 coastal resilience districts. You'll see at the end of my presentation, there is a QR code. We have a live online map viewer that you can view these in more detail and zoom in and zoom out. But this is just kind of a snapshot of how that stacks up around the coast. And these are those key coastal typologies that I spoke about. So this really covers, for the most part, in terms of coastal environment, the variety that we see up and down those different coastal resilience districts. And this is the types of typologies that we want to provide guidance on in terms of what are the different practices that may or may not work, and what are some of the different considerations that you would think about if you were doing work in one of these areas to address coastal flooding risk or erosion. Okay, and I talked a little bit about this, but this is just on those community risk hotspots. We're really looking at this across 3 distinct sectors. So we're looking at people and housing, public facilities and infrastructure, and economy. And so there are a number of data points that feed into each of those 3 sectors. And essentially what we are doing is creating a composite score for each of those 3 sectors and mapping that statewide. So you will have a gradient of vulnerability within each of those sectors that you see at the census block group level, all up and down the coast. And those maps are still being developed, but they are forthcoming. We're hoping to share those in the next few weeks, actually. So this is the map that I mentioned that is on our website, and that can be, there's a link to it on our website, and it can be, you can view it, you can kind of zoom in and out, it's interactive. This is also the QR code for our Resilient Coast website. So this is where a lot of our information about the project lives. That's where we are often doing updates about what the opportunities are for engagement and new materials that we're putting out. We have had a couple of public meetings already, as I mentioned. We are planning to do another series of virtual public meetings, hopefully later this winter or early spring. The recordings from our previous public meetings are also on this website. Our last public meeting was held in October. That has, I think, the most up-to-date information in detail about all of the materials that we've kind of developed and presented so far. We did have live interpretation services in 7 languages, and those were recorded. So you can see in those 7 languages, the recordings. We also have translated version of the slides on the website in each of those 7 languages as well. Like I said, we are hoping to hopefully put out a full draft of the plan later this winter or early spring. And that will include those hotspot maps that I talked about. There's going to be opportunities even before then, targeted opportunities to talk with us about some of those materials that are coming out. The hotspots will likely be presented at the next series of public meetings. And we have been periodically doing some targeted meetings with different constituencies. We've had a couple of EJ focus groups with folks that are connected to us through our community liaisons that are part of this project. And I'm also happy to meet with anybody one-on-one to talk more about the project. So on the next slide, I think I have my contact information. And if you want to learn more about this or you have questions and you want to weigh in, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to meet with anybody one-on-one. I would love to do that. So I'll stop there. And see if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Deanna. So we'll take questions from the council members. You all have questions or comments?
I have a question. So Deanna, about the districts, so the goal is to have them collaborating because they share similar situations. Is that organized, like, I'm just curious how that works, like organizationally, are they meeting with councils or how does that work?
Yeah, so we haven't decided what our kind of proposal is going to be on that yet. I'm seeing the actual convening of those groups as part of the implementation stage of Resilient Coast. And what our goal would be is to be able to provide some funding and assistance for those various districts to kind of form some type of governance body and to meet. And so any way that we can help kind of facilitate that, we're going to have that conversation with the municipalities. There are some places where there is kind of a natural regional convener, like an RPA or some other organization that's kind of doing that work already. And in those cases, there may not be a need for the state to come in and help facilitate. And in other places that maybe don't have as much capacity or technical assistance, like there is a role for us. So we're still feeling that out with the municipalities. We do think that near term, there's going to be an opportunity to kind of pilot this through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Boston Metro study that they're doing. So that's kind of happening in parallel with this study, but our study is going to be done first. And so we're on the steering committee for that, and we've been coordinating with them, and they've actually adjusted their geographic scope to align exactly with 3 of our coastal resilience districts. So the scope of their study will be for the Saugus, Mystic Charles, and the Ponset districts. And they're going to be diving in much deeper than we will be in the plan on like what are some of the like project ideas, like concrete project ideas that could be scoped across those 3 districts and funded by the federal government for pest control. And so we're kind of, thinking of that as like a pilot of what we'd like the other coastal resilience districts to do.
So they're going to be speaking to different entities in a way. I mean, in some cases you're talking federal conversations, but it also sounds like state conversations. And I'm also curious about like local conversations, like the zoning is the big one that comes up, and that's controlled at the municipal level. So
Yes, yeah. So zoning is a good example of one where like we would want communities within a district to be coordinating on that, right? You don't want water's not respecting municipal boundaries. So the city of Boston can have really great climate resilient zoning. And then, 2 streets over, when you get into Chelsea or wherever you are, it's a totally different situation. So coordination on that, understanding where they have shared flood pathways is actually another big one. And we looked at that when we were delineating the districts. We definitely want communities that have shared flood pathways to be working together on those solutions, because if Boston has one solution for their portion of the shoreline and then Chelsea's got a different one, that's going to be problematic and also just not as efficient in terms of, cost effectiveness and scale of solutions. So that's another goal.
okay, thank you.
I see Sophia.
Thanks, Deanna, and thanks, Undersecretary Power. My question is, it sort of goes off of what we just heard from Marcos. I'm just thinking about the collaboration between municipalities and the differences in resources and capacities that different municipalities have. Even if they have share some of the same issues. So I was wondering if you're thinking at all about how to make sure that the technical assistance and resources being provided are accounting for differences in the wealth and capacity of a particular municipality. So as an example, like I guess that was just given, like Boston and Chelsea versus like Newton and Wellesley, for example.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the hope is that by encouraging planning, prioritization, and project implementation at the district level, we start to kind of get people out of their municipal silos. So there may be, you may be in a municipality that is set, maybe let's just say like a little bit further inland. And the direct flood pathway that is going to impact you is not in your municipality. It travels through another municipality to get to you. You don't have, the ability to say, well, we're going to do X, Y, or Z on the shoreline, but that community does. And you might be a less resourced community, that community might be more resourced, or vice versa. But to take people kind of out of the thinking of, well, I'm in my municipality and I'm going to control, what happens here, and think more broadly about, well, let's look at the district as a whole and see what the risks are, where the risks are shared, where the flood pathways are originating from, what can be done on the shoreline to, try to adapt to that, and have everybody working together. We can fund that kind of work, and we can fund those kinds of projects outside of that kind of municipal silo. So that's part of the goal. That's not going to be the case necessarily everywhere. Like flood pathways is a pretty specific example of that, although especially in kind of the Boston metro area, that is a lot of what we're dealing with is really discrete kind of targeted flood pathways. But we're also hoping that, in most cases, I think this is true in most cases, most of the coastal resilience districts have a couple of at least a couple of well-resourced anchor communities that are far ahead on this, have a lot of money, are doing a lot of work on this, and other communities in their district maybe are not. And so hopefully bringing them together and having some of these district-wide conversations about what we all need to collectively be doing in that area can also start to, attempt to even out some of that technical assistance and resource, issue. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
I'm sorry, one
Yeah,
more.
go for it.
But on Sophia's question, it makes me think, and I understand the rationale of kind of having communities help each other essentially by spreading out the wealth. But I could imagine that it's possible that some communities may not be at the table because they don't have the people, even the staff, or the time to dedicate to being present to that. So I'm going to suggest that it would be really helpful if there were targeted resources in case of a community that doesn't have even staff to enable them to send somebody or to bring somebody on for the sole purpose, even though we know what they're trying to think regional.
Right.
But still,
To be represented.
right, because otherwise what happens in other certain situations is that, more resourced voices are going to be louder.
Yeah.
They're going to be heard. So,
Absolutely.
so it would be nice to see that in there if that's possible.
That's a really good suggestion. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And that is what we would want to try and provide those types of resources. The other thing I will say that might also speak a little bit to your question, Sophia, is remember too that, we have these districts, and the districts intentionally were not prioritized in any way because we didn't want there to be that kind of connotation with the districts. Like everybody's in a district that they are going to experience 2070 flood risk. We want everyone working together. But then we've got our hotspot mapping, which is really looking specifically at near-term vulnerability. And so, for example, the near-term hotspot map for people in housing is going to look at population density, the kind of scale of residential structure damage it projected for 2030, the location of environmental justice populations, and the location of affordable housing that is at risk from flooding. Those areas, that is also part of the consideration. Like, we don't know exactly how best to use the results of that mapping exercise because we're still doing it. But you can imagine, like, we want to prioritize intervention and resources in the place where we have a lot at risk. And so there's a little bit of that, I think, that's part of this too. And we might find that a lot of those areas are in places that don't have the resources or the staff to really be thinking about coastal resilience right now. And you might want to have targeted conversations with those communities to say, like, this is what we're finding in you know, your municipality, and there's a lot at risk here, and we want to bring you to the table and have conversations with you about what you can be doing in your community to address some of this risk.
Thanks, Sienna. Anyone else? Great. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And great. So now we will move to our next part of the meeting, a presentation by Shannon Ames, Executive Director of Low Impact Hydropower Institute. You know, our energy systems contribute to and also can solve the climate crisis, making environmental justice crucial during our energy transition. And so hydropower, it is essential for expanding wind and solar, sort of going beyond, but also significantly impacts communities, particularly those facing historic inequities. And so the Low Impact Hydropower Institute has worked since 1999 to reduce the impacts, and especially in marginalized and tribal communities. So thank you, Shannon, for coming.
Thank you for having me. Secretary, everybody, thank you very much for being here. It's kind of an honor. We appreciate it. I have a lot of information to go through, so I will speak louder and try to get through it all and leave plenty of time for questions and comments. I'm going to give you a little introduction to the organization. Then we're going to talk about hydropower, just to kind of level set, like what we're talking about, what is hydropower. And then thirdly, talk about our handbook, which is the detailed document that covers how we define low impact hydropower and the process we go through to certify facilities to meet that definition. So just quickly about us, we were formed in 1999. We are the only entity of our kind in the US and one of the few globally. So we have, we go through an iterative process to define low impact pump storage. We don't come up with it on our own. We try to get expertise from all different areas. I will say quickly that our board of directors is half environmental organizations with a concentration on river restoration and protection, and then the other half is related fields. But no hydropower owner can sit on our board, but we do have a advisory board because their technical expertise is very important to what we do. So one of the reasons, or the main reason that we're here today, is to tell you about some changes that we are proposing to our handbook that are very specific around tribal engagement and all of that and what that entails. So I will get into that in a minute. I also want to say that we are, so in many states, as well as other renewable portfolio programs, our certification is used to qualify hydropower into those programs, and Massachusetts is one of those. It is unique because all hydropower that wants to participate in the renewable portfolio standard has to be certified by us. And that is just through regulation. It's an easier way for the Department of Energy Resources to make sure hydropower meets the statutory requirements. So it's a little complicated. Leaky is required, but it's not really required. We're a voluntary program. So I will also say that when we develop our handbook, we do an iterative process. We originally published it in 1999. We did a major update in 2016. That took 10 years to get to. We promised ourselves and our certificate holders that we would not do such a major thing again, that we would be iterative. So about every 2 years, we update the handbook. If there are any major changes, then we go out to public comment, and this will be the fourth, this is the fourth round of changes that are major and that we are undergoing right now. Yeah. So let's go to.
If you're having trouble with that, you can also just say next slide and we can do it for you.
I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just quickly, we'll go through how hydro works, how it intersects with the environment, which overlaps with what we look at for our criteria, and then quickly talk about renewable portfolio standards or renewable energy credits. So essentially, and it's very simple, it's one of the it is the oldest large scale electricity producer. And the first renewable, it's just water over and using gravity to create electricity. Next slide. So all hydropower uses a dam and my amazing technical staff had to put this word in here, diversion weir. It is just another name for another kind of dam. Some dams, water goes over the top, other ones, it doesn't. So anyway, I apologize for this little technical words that get in here every now and then. And they do that so you can impound the water. You want to create height because it's the vertical distance that determines how much power you can create. It also allows you to divert the water into the structure. We call it a penstock, but it's just a big pipe, and it takes the water and puts it into the turbine. It rotates the turbine blades, which is connected to a shaft. The shaft turns, which spins in an electric magnetic generator, creating electricity, gets on the lines, goes to the grid. Next one. So, image. Okay. So this is just a pictorial of what I just said, water intake up here. This shows a powerhouse and a dam integrated. They are one and the same sort of structure. The water goes down through the pipe. You can see the turbine at the bottom. It basically turns kinetic energy into mechanical energy, which then goes into electrical energy with the little red lines. Next slide. This is an example of a hydropower here in Massachusetts that shows an integrated powerhouse with a dam. This is the New Home Dam in Orange, Massachusetts. And like most hydropower in New England, most of the powerhouses were actually built for mechanical energy. And they were powering, like here in Lowell, they were powering textile mills, paper mills, and other kinds of mills. And that is the case here, the mills on the right side of the slide. The powerhouse is on the left side of the slide here, and the water goes in here, and it's integrated with the dam, and the water comes out just underneath. Next slide. There is also a different kind where the powerhouse is separated from the dam. And that's important because one, it's done because it can create bigger head or bigger vertical distance to create more power. But what it does is takes the water from the dam, puts it through the pipe into the powerhouse, and then the water comes back out into the natural riverbed. But it leaves this stretch of water from the dam down to the tail race as it's diverted or bypassed by the pipe. And so we call this a bypass reach. Next slide. And this is an example in Massachusetts of that kind of powerhouse. This is West Springfield powerhouse in West Springfield, Massachusetts. The dam is here. There's a power canal in this case, not a pipe, but a canal. It goes down to the powerhouse there. Once it generates electricity, it goes into the tail race. And it leaves this whole stretch here of river that's been bypassed by the water. In this case, it's bifurcated, has an island in the middle. Other things that you might see at a hydropower include this surge tank. It looks like just a big water tank, which it basically is. It basically helps to regulate pressure. It can provide more water if the pressure drops, or it can absorb water if the pressure gets too big. So it just keeps things flowing smoothly. We also have spillways. So spillways are basically the way that extra water gets around the dam. And we have those to make sure that the dams stay viable, if they're not structurally impaired, and also just to make sure that the water gets downstream. So there's one type on the higher image, that is a gate. And at the bottom, this is a very unique one. It's called a glory hole, but it does the same thing. It's above the dam, upstream of the dam, and extra water just flows in there and then comes out the tail race. Next slide. Then this is another kind of hydropower. This is called pump storage. This is very, it's very discussed right now because pump storage is basically it's a water battery. There are 43 existing right now, and they were built to take the extra power from nuclear power plants. Because nuclear power plants can't turn off. And so when they have extra power, they needed somewhere to put it, and so they built these. There are over 80 of these being proposed now because it can create long-term, long-duration energy storage. So, and there are 2 in Massachusetts, and the oldest one in the country is in Connecticut. These do not qualify for the renewable portfolio standard, but they do qualify into the clean peak standard. And they are ineligible for leaky. We don't have a good definition for low impact pump storage because it is different. But we are developing one, and I would love to come back and talk to you about that. But the pump storage has 2 reservoirs, an upper reservoir and a lower reservoir, the lower reservoir can be located on the river, it's called open loop, or off the river, disconnected from a natural water body, and that's called closed loop. And most of the new proposed ones are closed loop. And basically, when there's extra power, often these days during the day, and there's a lot of solar and wind available, they'll take the electricity and use it to pump water up to the upper reservoir. And then when there's a high demand and a lack of electricity, they will let the water back down through the turbines and generate electricity. Pump storage stations are net energy users, but they are critical for providing grid support. In fact, I don't know if any of you remember the last blackout that we had in New England, but we were brought back online by the pump storage facilities in Western Mass.
What was that?
When was that? That was like 90s, early 2000s. Next slide. This is a picture of the Bear Swamp pump storage. It's located in Florida and Rowe, and I never remember, but I think this is Florida and that's Rowe. This is the Deerfield River. This is the upper reservoir, which was built out of a natural formation in the hills, but then it was concrete lined and created this reservoir. You can see it. This is the entrance. You go about a half a mile into the mountain.
Where is this?
This is in Florida and Rowe, Massachusetts.
It's where? Oh, Florida, Massachusetts.
Yes,
Thank you.
Massachusetts. Yeah.
Florida and Rowe.
And Rowe.
I'm sitting here going, there's no topography in Florida.
No, this is.
Doesn't it look like Miami?
Yeah, not at all. Yep, but basically the intake is underneath that upper reservoir. It goes into the mountain, generates electricity, and then gets put back into the river right here. It is fascinating, and I'd be happy to organize a tour for the council if you ever want to see that, but it is it's fascinating thing. Next slide. So other types of hydro you will hear about, there's conduit or inline. These are put in water structures The MWRA has 5 of these that are certified by, WEHE. They are fabulous, and I wish we had more of these. Every water supply or water treatment plant should have conduit hydropower in it, in my humble opinion. And then there is also hydrokinetic, which you might hear about, or marine hydro. These use turbines that are sort of just connected to a line, but not connected to other infrastructure. And you just drop them in, and they use the natural current or natural waves to make electricity. Although I will point out that there are no commercially viable facilities right now. Still in the works. Next slide. So quickly on environmental and social impacts, there are water-based, land-based, cultural, historic, and environmental justice impacts, and then recreation and access issues. Next slide. So environmental impacts that we think about are things like, a dam and reservoir, they interrupt water processes. So they interrupt flows, they prevent fish from migrating to their regular habitat, spawning habitat. They affect other species and their habitats, changes water quality, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, and usually that's dissolved oxygen. The dams alter sediment processes. Sediment normally flows out to the ocean, but when you have a dam, it doesn't. And reservoirs, all reservoirs could create greenhouse gas emissions. It's a topic of great debate right now, but that is fact. And then structures like the roads, powerhouses, transmission lines, all of that disrupts habitat as well. Next slide. And then for cultural recreation and access impacts, dam construction creates a reservoir. That reservoir has been, or, not everywhere, but some reservoirs have flooded out cultural zones and sacred lands, burial grounds, and traditional properties. Structures, roads, etc., can also impact structural landscapes and view sheds, which we know are very important. I will also say that especially in this region, most of our dams are older than 60, around 100 years old. So they themselves are considered historic resources and are subject to some protections. Dams are dangerous, don't get near them. And so there will be access issues around for safety reasons, but that can impact access. And project operations can create conflicts between river users. So once you have a dam in place and you have a hydro, you've got manufactured flows. If there's any storage at all, and when that happens, you've got regulated or scheduled releases. And then you have a question of, am I going to optimize my scheduled release for whitewater rafting or for fly fishermen and fishing habitat? And so at least on the Deerfield River, there are meetings every year among all those groups to talk about what releases are going to be, what dates, and what they're going to be for. And project locations, they are picked for geological reasons and water, river reasons. And that in itself can create and exacerbate burdens on marginalized communities. Next slide. So of course, we exist because we think that there is a benefit for hydropower. It is the only 24/7 renewable. It creates grid stability, renewable generation. It can help integrate wind and solar. So we think it's really important. It also can create recreation and other economic drivers in rural regions, especially, and it supports the tax base and other local development. So there are some upsides for sure. Where's that picture? That is on the Deerfield River. In fact, all my pictures are on the Deerfield River. That is not the powerhouse. That is an abandoned mill that's being redeveloped. But I believe that's the Deerfield River project. Next slide. So just quick about RECs. I don't know how many, I apologize if I'm repeating information that you know, but renewable energy credits are the positive attributes. associated with being a renewable energy. And you get 1 rec per 1 megawatt hour that's generated from a renewable facility. People define renewable differently. For the purposes of the Massachusetts RPS, you can see for class 1, which is new hydropower capacity, you need to be under 30 megawatts. And for class 2, which is existing, you need to be under 7.5 megawatts. We have not seen in our certifying over 300 facilities in 24 states, there is no correlation between impact and the size of the facility. We might think big is bad, but honestly, small can be devastating. So, and big can be innocuous. These numbers were chosen for other reasons. So I just want to make sure we're clear about that, but in Massachusetts, LEED is required.
Could you explain that?
Yes.
Could you just go through that again? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Is that, where you said big is not necessarily bad and small can be devastating. Could you go through that again?
Yes, so we've certified over 300 facilities across the country. So we have evaluated using our criteria, projects of all sizes. We have certified one that's 800 megawatts in the Pacific Northwest, and we have certified many of them that are under a megawatt, really small. But we reject about 20% of the applications that come to us. And there's no correlation between the size of the facility and the reasons that we reject them. It
Oh, I
could,
see.
yeah. So a small one could have, you got it. Okay.
And what is RPS?
The Renewable Portfolio Standard. So Massachusetts has one, it was originally revamped in 2008, which is when the hydropower was included, and LEED certification started being used. But the Renewable Portfolio Standard requires that utilities buy a certain percentage of renewable electricity to provide to consumers. That's the one that drives, when we say it's one of the programs that drive us to getting to 100% renewable. Yeah. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I can pause there. I didn't meant to time myself. But I'll pause there. Any questions about hydropower before we move on to the handbook?
We'll take questions from council members, if you have any questions or comments.
I have a question. The hydropower that is in Massachusetts, do you know if most of it's privately owned or publicly owned?
So Massachusetts utilities cannot own electricity generation in New England. And most of the facilities are owned by independent power producers. A few are owned by municipalities. Next slide. So turning to our handbook, sorry, did these as 2 separate slides and presentations. One more. We can skip this. We talked about us and you have the slides. Next slide. Skip that.
And all of this will be posted also for
Yes.
anyone to see and review.
So really why we're here today, because we're revising our handbook. I did bring a copy of our handbook, which I left over there. Thank you, spiral bound. But this, feel free to look at it, pass it around, but this is yeah. I wanted to have we talked about the handbook, but that's the handbook. It's also available on our website. And it goes through in great detail, our whole program, our definition, how you meet the standards, et cetera. But part of our bylaws say that we, as the board and the organization, will revisit our program every year to make sure that it is still doing what it's supposed to do, because we appreciate that things change, people change, the environment change, climate change. So we want to make sure that we're evolving with that. Our vision is that we do get to a world where all hydropower puts people and the environment first, as opposed to revenues? Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So your presentation is focuses on relatively small hydropower installations. Is that right? I mean, doesn't most electrical power from hydro come from big mega dams?
So, in New England, we have a lot of hydropower facilities that are smaller.
Right.
And in the West, we have a few hydropower facilities that are massive.
Right, but we're also building massive transmission lines in Canada, mega dams.
Yes, and yes. We do not certify facilities in Canada. That's a whole nother conversation. And
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
happy to
different
have.
animal.
It is a different animal, and it's not necessarily because of the size. From my opinion, it is the process, it's how they're going about it. There are other considerations that come into play with Canadian hydropower. Yeah,
Can I tell like a tiny hydropower story?
sure.
In 1989, I was doing some work, volunteer work in Zimbabwe. And we had a couple of days off. So we went up to Lake Kariba. Lake Kariba is the product of a big mega dam project that an Italian company, my ancestry is Italian, an Italian company built in 1959. And it dammed the Kariba River and created this enormous reservoir. And in the process, displaced about 200,000 people. I was talking to this young man who was plying the tourist trade by the side of the road. And he told me that about how many people were buried under that reservoir and how they received nothing. They didn't get any electricity and they hated it. So that's why I'm sort of kind of focused on the idea of mega dams versus small hydro. Do you think there should be any different like considerations when legislators or regulators are considering hydropower between these big mega dam projects and small
Right.
Local?
I believe, for me, it would make me happy if Massachusetts had the same standard for Canadian hydro as they do for New England hydro, and they don't. And that doesn't have to do with size. It has to do with the fact that, and I'll use Lee because that's the proxy right now, but we look at making sure that there are adequate flows. We make sure that people have not been displaced. If it's a new dam or diversion, right now that's not eligible for our certification. If it's an existing dam and they changed some operating parameters, we would want to make sure that the ecosystem is protected, that people are protected. And if you ask those questions, then you've ruled out some of those. The problem might not be that it's a mega dam. The problem is that they flooded communities with no thought and compensation. I hope you understand the difference. Like, I don't think necessarily size is the problem. To me, how they went about developing that project is the problem. So in 2024, getting back to the handbook, we, as a board, wanted to ensure that we are very clear about how we incorporate tribal engagement and tribal entity recommendations into how hydropower is operated. Next slide. And I will say that we do that as part of our process already, but we were not clear on the language around that. So that's what we're attempting to do. This slide just talks about the evolution of our handbook. It just demonstrates that we have an iterative process, that we update our handbook regularly. Next slide. So the process that we have gone through for this this handbook update is similar to past ones. First, we do a lot of research on the problem we're trying to solve, what the problem is with the handbook, what are we omitting. We will look at documentation, how other people are doing whatever it is that we're concerned about. And once we have proposed changes, we present those to our technical committee. That's a subcommittee of our board of directors. In this case, we also hired two tribal consultants to provide sort of their perspectives on the changes to make sure that they made sense and were adequate. Then we went out for public comment. We got comments back, integrated those comments into more changes. We put it back out for public comment. We made changes, not really very many in that second round. The technical committee has seen that. And then we wanted to, we have extended the public comment through this meeting until the end of next week. Although if you do want to comment and you need more time than that, then please let me know. I'm going to be flexible on that date. And then we will incorporate any comments that we get in this last bit of public comment, and then we will bring it to our board for approval, and then we'll post it. What I do know is that, we'll learn a lot when we implement these changes. And so I would imagine, like other versions of the handbook, once we do a major change, then a couple of years later, we have tweaks to clarify and reflect what we've learned over implementing the changes. So that is what I expect. Next. Thank you. So the key changes in this handbook edit, we have newly defined terms, including those related to indigenous knowledge, tribal nations, and then various tribal interests and resources. All of our definitions are in Appendix A of the handbook. So our handbook and our criteria and our goals are science-based. That's been very important from the beginning. We also appreciate that the term science-based does not necessarily correlate with the same kind of level of understanding and knowledge within tribes. So we have incorporated indigenous knowledge-based. Wherever we said science-based, we now say science-based and indigenous knowledge-based. And we have clarified the scope of tribal considerations, interests, and engagement throughout the whole handbook. Next slide. So for our purposes in the handbook, for the purposes of official recommendations for how a hydropower should operate, we look to state and federally recognized tribes. If a tribe is not state or federally recognized, then we incorporate their feedback they're still asked to be listed in applications. We notify them, and then we will take public comments from them. Next. So as I said, this slide clarifies that the version of the handbook that you have before you does not have these edits in it. And what we used to say are issued by local, state, and federal agencies. And now we have added or by tribal nations, to be very clear. And then for all cases, recommendations have to be formally issued. They have to be recent. They have to be the most stringent and consistent with support of other management plans for the river, the hydro zone. And then if there are conflicts in recommendations, we have a process by which we go through more of a flow chart and hierarchy. Next slide. And this I already sort of mentioned, but tribal recommendations can be indigenous knowledge based. And we also have incorporated the definitions tribal trust resource, tribal trust species, traditional or tribal indigenous cultural landscape, and traditional cultural property. And all of those have formal definitions that we have not made up. We have, as part of our research, we cite, but we borrow these definitions from other agencies and entities. Next slide. And then other changes, this is just a list of other changes that we've done. Simplified some language, clarified some language, added some more definitions, to make sure everybody was on the same page. If a dam is recommended for removal, then we treat that as a not eligible. And so we've clarified how we go about making that decision. This has always been the case. We have a goal for every criterion, and we have a list of standards that you can choose from. Those standards have to demonstrate that you met the goal. Apparently, we weren't clear about enough of that in the words on the handbook page, so we've clarified that. And for every criterion, we have a plus standard. So if you meet our criteria and you've done something extra that we recognize, then you can earn another 3 to 5 years onto your certificate. We've also clarified, so a lot of hydropower facilities are on dams that are owned by another entity. The most common is U.S. Army Corps of Engineer dams that have private entities with a powerhouse. We call those run of release facilities because they have no power, no control over what water they get. That being said, we look at, we still look at that water source. We still look at the impoundment created by the Army Corps Dam and consider that when we think about and assess the entire facility. I think that is everything I have to. Oh, well, sorry, I'm running very late, but this is just process. Everything is on our website. I did say comments are accepted through January 15th, but again, if you need more time, please let me know. We can also take comments in a conversation. We can be very accommodating. And that's all. Thank you. I know that was a lot of information through at you. But I would welcome any questions or comments, feedback.
Do you know how much hydropower is generated in Massachusetts now? Roughly?
There is about 6,000 gigawatt hours in New England. Yeah, we have, what do we have? 69 hydropower facilities in Massachusetts. 44 of those have been certified by our organization. Yes.
Sorry,
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
no,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Sorry, thank you for presentation. I would like to like share with you a bit, and also
Yes.
probably you can also emphasize also the handbook about the impact and on the communities.
Yes.
Because in Cambodia and Vietnam and Laos, mostly in Southeast Asian country, the hydro large on the population.
Excuse me. I'm so sorry. We are unable to hear you online. Can you perhaps come a little bit closer to the, or speak clearer?
To the owl.
Yes, come closer. Yes.
Well, I would like to share with you a bit about the impact of the hydro dams in Cambodia, at the same time also in some countries in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, Laos, and also Thailand, and also Burma, that the hydro dams have the negative impacts on the community. At the same time, also nature in terms of deforestation in around and a kind of massive deforestation there. And the solution so far they have for the people is kind of violent, eviction, or crackdown, or land grab as well. So I would like to know about the solution in terms of talk about tribal issue and also integration. And another thing is that probably in the handbook also emphasize about the impacts, it's the same also solution as well for the
Yes.
people. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So, couple things. One is, one little fun fact, there are over 90,000 dams in the National Inventory of Dams in the United States, and 2,500 of them have hydropower on them. So I say that because if any new hydropower is built, it's going to be built on an existing dam. So we face the luxury, if you will, of not having to necessarily think about a new dam and an inundation of a new habitat. That being said, we, especially for facilities in the West, which have very active and very formal tribes who have been impacted by those dams, we look to the tribes. So if a tribe that is impacted by a facility weighs in on an application, is happy with the current operations, has a good working relationship with the owner of the facility, etc., feels that the habitat is being protected, then that is something that we would look favorably on. Does that help? Okay.
Marcos, I think you had a question.
Yeah, although that was a good question, I was curious too. The ones that you have certified in the region, is there a list of those and how they meet the criteria somewhere that you want to examine that or see it mapped out? Is that on the website or where would I?
Yes, so on our website, every certified facility has a dedicated page. And on that page, you will find the entire history. You'll find every application, any comments that have been posted that we've received, any responses back to those comments, our reviewer report. These are lengthy, in-depth reports that very clearly go through each criterion, what we looked at to figure out if it met it, and our determination of whether it had or not. So all of that is there for our certificate renews every 10 years now. And every time we go through that process, the history is on the website. So all the documentation is there, a summary of the project, some photos of the project. And then also on our website, we have the full list of certified facilities. And you can download an Excel spreadsheet of all the certified facilities with some key data points about each one.
And you said they have to be recertified every 10 years.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. In 2022, we extended the term from 5 years to 10. But in that process, and that was due to feedback from our certificate holders primarily, but to counterbalance that, we have yearly annual reports that are due for every certified facility. These are active certificates. It's not you're done, I'll see you in 10 years. It's every year they have commitments. And then if something happens during the duration of that certificate, for example, you're issued a new federal license, then we reopen the certificate at that time. So there are trigger points where we can recertify within that term period. Yes.
So for the changes to the handbook, is there, is it kind of a grandfather period until they go or up for recertification or the new re-triggering, or is there kind of a compliance time period that's the case?
Right, so any new applications that we get, be it a recertification or a new certification, they'll have to meet the updated plan. But we don't go back and make everybody go through it again until it's their time.
Any other council members? Well, thank you, Shannon, so much for
Thank you.
coming. And now, yeah, go for it, Mary.
So, we're headed towards, we're calling it an energy transition. And with an energy transition, it's not just changing energy, changing the form of energy, like fossil fuel to renewables. And what I know we are doing on the grid modernization side and on the energy efficiency side is that we are requiring energy equity metrics. So I've discovered that Lowell actually has like a 20 megawatt private hydro,
Yes.
right? I live here, I don't benefit from that. Is there a movement in your institution or elsewhere, this is to the EJ Council, to ask for equity metrics in terms of hydro? Like, are there jobs coming to people from Lowell from that resource? The procedural justice aspect to our Lowell voices part of that process, and should there be carve-outs of the megawatts to people who live here that would help in reducing energy burdens and other things?
Yes. It's an excellent question. From our perspective, so I think I mentioned this really quickly, but we are defining low impact pump storage. And through that process, we get to kind of start all over again, but with the base of our current program. And that exact question has come up as a potential criterion for evaluation. And then our process with that, we will actually go to public comment soon in the next couple of weeks on that. And then if we are successful in publishing a low impact definition for pump storage, our next step would be to potentially create a certification program where we would enact that. But what at least we're hoping is that it's a roadmap for development, that people are thinking about exactly that when they're developing these new projects. I'll also mention that there's a lot of federal funding currently for dams and hydropower facilities to make upgrades either for grid reasons or environmental reasons. And the Department of Energy Grid Deployment Office, which is implementing that grant program, has a new requirement of community benefit plans. And I will say that I love the hydropower industry. They are devoted people who love the rivers and the facilities that they work on. That being said, the idea of a community benefit plan threw many for a loop. And so there's a lot of work and growth to be done there. And we are trying to think also, Leahy, about what we can do more. We do facilitate a lot of tours for students and community members. Unfortunately, we do that in a reactive way. And so if you want a tour and you say you want a tour of the Lowell facility, I will make that happen. I would love to make that a more formal program across our organization, but it's in the works, I would say.
Hi, sorry.
Yeah, so I think, sorry, just, I think we'll officially open it up to the public. But I think if you could introduce yourselves, which maybe we'll go back to the prior commenters, but name and city or town. And just before, I think there's a couple other instructions for Q&A.
Yes, so if you're going to be making a comment in the room, may just ask you to come a little bit closer to this, which is the microphone. In-person questions will be limited to 2 minutes. Please just introduce yourself. We also have the option for a Q&A box for people participating online. And if we don't get a chance to read those out, they will be shared with the council members.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, and then just one other comment before you go ahead. This will be our last comment, so it is 8 o'clock and we want to respect everyone's time.
Yep.
So.
Great.
That'll be the last comment.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Brad Busher, Groundwork Lawrence, Mass. I guess I have a couple questions. Does Leahy have standards for the operators, operation and management capacity? So for example, the Lowell facility has been offline for a while because they forgot to close the cap and they flooded the control room. And in Lawrence, the crest gates failed during the spring fish migration, which is a critical time period for the operation of natural resources, the function and flow. Additionally, municipality of Lawrence and stakeholders filed FERC complaints against the owners of the operation of Lawrence for access to the waterfront. And they continue to deny it. And during the FERC process, they're refusing to provide studies such as a dam breach analysis that would enable this, and instead putting the $500,000 study burden on community-based organizations to raise those dollars.
Yeah. So, a couple things, I guess. One is, yes, we look at that. We have criteria about operating, sort of the minimum is that you have to be complying with your license. And if you're not, then you need to fix that. Sometimes operating according to your license isn't sufficient to meet our criteria. In which case, we will tell the facility exactly what they need to do to meet our criteria. And they have a choice to meet it or not. And sometimes people walk away. We also have the opportunity for already certified facilities, which I think the Lawrence one is, to revoke certification, which we have also done. The Lawrence one is in our radar, but we have not conducted a review yet. So thank you, because your comments I will make note and go back and see where we are in the process for that one. But we do hold them accountable. Yes. And it really helps to know what's happening from the community perspective. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So thank you, everyone. Now, I'll just talk about next steps. Our next meeting is March 13 in Framingham. So just curious if council members want to hear on a specific topic or issue. I think there's one maybe that we might want to consider. From council member Han. But if sorry. I think Cheryl, Holly, if you can mute yourself, there's a little bit of feedback.
You're not able to say that, but if you're working.
Cheryl, sorry, there you go. Yeah, so are there topics that council members want to hear about or presentations? There's a few agencies that haven't come yet, but I also think maybe Caroline, you had a suggestion?
Just on the basis, and maybe as a follow-up from today's discussion around coastal resilience as well, I know that certainly at National Grid, we will be soon releasing a climate vulnerability assessment related to critical energy infrastructure on National Grid system, and it'll be a published report that we thought, if there's interest, especially kind of following on, because one of the things that the assessment does identify is the impact of coastal flooding, especially in critical infrastructure like substations. So if there's interest in that, be happy to kind of give a short presentation as well, just as follow-up and answer questions too.
Yeah, is that okay for council members for us to add that to the agenda for next meeting? Great.
And you may be early, but the network geothermal project line at Framingham too.
Yep.
That might be an interesting tour. So,
Oh, maybe we do that before the meeting.
I can help and reach out to my Eversource.
That would be great.
to-
It's a National Grid.
It's an
project.
Eversource project, but I
Okay.
can follow up.
Great. So the geothermal. Okay, so perhaps geothermal and National Grid's climate vulnerability assessment for critical energy facilities.
One more, Maria Melen, this is.
Yes.
I think in light of the changing federal landscape, it would be great if we can get an update of some kind around the money that has been dispersed under grants and or other opportunities from some of the agencies that we may have already heard from is one thing. And then the other thing is just this may be too forward thinking, but planning ahead, since there are going to be quite a few processes relating to the implementation of the climate law that was just passed, getting folks in from DOER in particular and DEP or DPU to talk about how they're going to engage with EJ populations and give them feedback on those processes, I think could be useful.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. So that, I think we'll talk about, those two topics and then see if maybe we can have an update on the federal grants and, the new climate law. So now I will ask for a motion to close.
So
If I can have a second.
Second, Melissa Ferretti.
Thank you. Sophia, can we do roll call for motion to close?
Yes, Kalila Barnett,
Yes.
Madeline Fraser Cook, Melissa Harding Moretti, Cheryl Hawley,
Yes.
Caroline Hahn,
yes.
Namrita Kapoor, Lydia Lowe, Marcos Luna,
Yes.
Peter Matthey, Sophia Owen,
Yes.
Jen Salonetti, Patricia Spence, Ari Zorn, Maria Belen Power.
Yes. And with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
There's one, I was just thinking.
And which one? Oh, okay. All right. I think I
They're
was
much better than one.
the Framingham one.
It's like, it's long.
That was.